excited to welcome Janta Power. Janta Power, the CEO and co-founder Mohammed will be joining us. They are building 3D solar towers that generate more power in less space, unlocking new deployment opportunities for distributed energy. We'll also be welcoming Matt, the CEO and co-founder of Powerline. Powerline is building AI-native intelligence for battery portfolios, acting as a digital analyst for grid-scale storage and helping operators make better decisions. Our last panelist will be the co-founder and CFO of Hexium. Hexium is building next-generation isotope enrichment technology that supports the nuclear renaissance and the need for more reliable, scalable, clean energy. So please help me in welcoming Mohammed, Matinee, and Jake in conversation with general partner and MaC co-founder Mike Palahniuk.
Okay, last panel of the day. Thank you for sticking with us. This is an exciting one for me for a lot of reasons, but all the companies that we've talked about today and that you've heard from in some form or fashion are all reliant upon energy. It is truly the thing that makes the world work. And what these companies are doing is sort of at the base of what everyone else is doing, and it's very important, and excited to showcase what these companies are doing. To sort of frame it and kick it off, I wanted to talk about something related to energy. I don't have them, but there's two charts that I use a lot in both diligence and talking about the energy space, and I'll explain them so you can sort of understand sort of where we're at with energy. There's one chart that it sort of shows the plots of per capita GDP for every country in the world relative to the per capita energy production of that country. And there's almost a straight correlation, which means those countries that have high energy production per capita also have high GDP per capita. In the same way that if you are an energy poor country, you will have a low per capita GDP. So there's this direct line from the more energy a country can produce, the more wealthy that country is and the higher quality of living, standard of living that people in that country have. It really shows the power of energy to pull people out of poverty into wealth and higher standards of living. At the same time, there's a chart that shows the U.S. annual electricity production relative to China's. And we were well ahead of China in the 90s up until the 2000s. The U.S. produces about 4,000 terawatt hours of electricity per year. And that number has been basically the same for 26 years. We have not increased our electricity production in 26 years. In about 2010, China's growth curve went exponential. Today, they're producing about 10,000 terawatt hours of electricity per year, almost triple of what the United States produces. And as I just said, more energy produced leads to higher per capita GDP, higher standard of living, more power on the global stage. So this is clearly a very big problem for the United States. We need to produce more energy in any way possible, and that's something that these companies are working on, and I'm very proud that MaC is an investor in all these companies. So I'm going to start with some questions with that framing, and let's see, Mohammed, I'll start with you, and Janta. It feels like solar is becoming one of the most critical components of a country's overall energy power generation mix, yet the U.S.'s solar power generation, like electricity, is less than 1/3 of China's. What does the U.S. get right, and what do we get wrong about, and not just the U.S., but North America, Western allies in general? What do we get right? What do we get wrong about solar power? And could you talk specifically about how Janta is going to help not just the U.S. but other countries get it right?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be able to talk in front of everyone. In terms of the U.S. versus China, as far as energy policy is concerned, I think if you look at most technology that China's leading in today, most of the innovation started in the U.S. Right? So solar panels, batteries, lithium ion, and things like that. But I think China's just done a really good job at mass manufacturing and scaling it. The other thing that I think China has done pretty well is when it comes to permitting. and just legislation and all the red tape that goes into doing really large-scale projects, they've been able to, deploy gigawatts in a matter of months instead of, 5 to 10 years. This has been an issue in the U.S. It continues to be an issue in the U.S. I think that needs to change if we're going to compete with China at that scale. As far as manufacturing goes, though, I think manufacturing solar panels is one of the most difficult things out there in terms of just the economics. Not really high margin. It's a commodity. So I actually don't mind China doing that. And a company like Janta doing what I would call the higher added value of the whole supply chains. For example, the panels themselves are only maybe 10% of the total cost today if you're doing a full-scale project. Now, with our technology, we're about maybe 50% of that total cost. So if we're doing the higher value manufacturing in the US, which we are, and China's doing the only the panel manufacturing, I think that's a good thing. But that's what I would say the US is doing really well, and that the others are what China's doing really well as well. So.
Thank you. I realized I skipped what was my favorite question, and also an opportunity for you to explain in more detail what your companies do, so I apologize, but I'll ask each of you to answer this question. But why is energy important to you? And at a high level, what motivated each of you to start your companies?
Well, I think one of the biggest reasons is I've done a lot of traveling to China. I've seen what happens when you don't take care of your air quality. And then I look at my children. One of them's over there. It's his birthday today. So when you see a kid, now you know why. And it really kind of makes you start thinking about things differently. I started thinking about the life and the climate I was going to leave behind for my children and my children's children. And so really, the thing that got me interested, we live in Austin, Texas. And if you leave at any time of the day, you're going to be stuck in 3 lanes of traffic. You go to another part, it's going to be 4 lanes. You come to LA, you're stuck in 10 lanes, 12 lanes, 14 lanes. But the reason for that is because human beings generally find the path of least resistance. We're like water. And so with all this demand coming from AI data centers, we have to develop clean supply, and we have to do it in a way that doesn't circumvent the things that we're putting in here. Because what happens when you add more lanes to the freeway, it automatically fills back up, then people find different ways. And so we have to compete with combined cycle natural gas. We have to compete with clean coal, which is the same thing as dirty coal with better marketing. And so, yeah, that's what gets me interested and got me motivated to start a company working on the nuclear renaissance.
Matinee, what about you?
Well, I don't go way back behind, like tens of years ago, why I started to work on energy. But about Powerline, there are 2 things happening, massive movements happening in the world with massive impact. One is that we are electrifying everything. And the other one is that AI is growing. And none of these movements are going anywhere. They're just like growing and growing. And these 2 are asking for 3 things. One is more power, more than we ever needed before. Second is more flexibility in power generation and power consumption. And the third one is this has to be clean. It cannot be unsustainable. It has to be sustainable. The intersection of all of these 3 requirements is batteries, because we are seeing bigger and bigger batteries every day. They are very massive. So that comes to that power generation and power, even though they don't generate, but power generation. The flexibility, batteries are the most flexible energy asset we have. They can charge and discharge in a matter of seconds. They don't generate, but they actually create flexibility. They can respond very quickly. They can decouple that time of supply and time of consumption in a world where there are more and more unpredictability in our supply with renewables, in our demand with electric vehicles everywhere, and in the massive AI load. And obviously they facilitate the penetration of renewable energy. So as a result of all of these, if you want to be at somewhere that answers all of these questions and is the right place to be in if you are an energy basically expert. It is the batteries, and that's why like what motivates us. Because of all of those benefits, batteries obviously are growing very rapidly. They are the fastest growing energy class asset. But with all of that rapid growth comes a lot of complexity. Like we are seeing that you have to now operate in a grid that not anymore one-directional flow of electrons. Now like things go everywhere. It's not only just a few large power plants that generate energy, but it is like all sorts of types of power plants and with different sizes. Now it's not centralized anymore, it's decentralized, and batteries have to operate at the middle of all of this mass. So there is massive complexity that is coming up with this massive growth of batteries. And that's where got us excited for Powerline, how we can handle that complexity that is outpacing basically the deployments.
That's great. Mohammed, I want to give you a chance to answer the question of why is energy important to you and what motivated you to start Janta?
Yeah, so my journey started pretty young. I was born and raised in Gambia, West Africa. Only 50% of the population has access to electricity, right? So I was part of the fortunate part where, you know, you would come back home from school and there'd be electricity for like 5 minutes and it would go off. And that's it till tomorrow. I was like, someone has to fix this. And that's kind of how it started. Decided to study electrical engineering because of that. During undergrad, I partnered with my university, and we would go find part of that 50% in Gambia that don't have electricity at all. So there's like a bunch of schools that have never had electricity before. We would install solar plus batteries for them. So that's how I started my journey. Eventually wanted to build the actual technology that goes into those schools and those hospitals, and that's how I started Janta.
Love it. Jake, you know, you guys are working in nuclear, both fusion and fission, and you know, the nuclear industry has promised, you know, clean energy so abundant it's too cheap to meter. And they've been saying this for 40, 50 years, and yet we don't have it yet. I mean, what's changing today that gives you confidence that we will have clean, cheap energy that, you know, is too cheap to meter? And how is Hexium, you know, playing a part in what will happen there?
Well, in the fuel value chain, we're just one part of it. There are a lot of conversion processes that happen, a lot that goes into fuel fabrication. We are the enrichment portion for these critical isotopes, which are needed for both fission and fusion. Why haven't we seen it? Well, I think a lot of that just comes down to the risk profile and capital profile that nuclear energy is required. I mean, think of like the last two reactors that have been stood up in the United States, Vogtle 3 and Vogtle 4. They bankrupted Westinghouse and brought Toshiba to its knees. So when deploying these assets costs so much that it puts, you know, the combined resources of a small country at risk, you're not going to have large deployment. And really, nuclear is just a part of it. It's the, you know, some portion for baseload power, which is also augmented by a lot of these other technologies, a lot of the renewables. But that's where things have been changing now. The SMRs that are coming out, you know, I've looked and we've been working with a lot of these companies because they realize now that they need to shore up their fuel supply, and we're a critical piece of that. And the cost to bring one of these online is going to be 1/200th of what some of those other historic plants. They're a lot smaller, don't get me wrong. You're not getting the same thing for 1/200th of the price. But what you're getting is something that is now actually investable, that isn't going to potentially bankrupt companies. And then the other piece has to do with safety. You know, you had things like Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl. This goes back a long time, and a lot of these were failures in the active systems. And if you look at the Gen 3 Plus and the Gen 4 nuclear reactors, so these are things with accident-tolerant fuels, that they passively are safe. The very same conditions that would lead to a criticality event also remove its ability to get to that critical state. And in the past, you know, you had to rely on a lot of these electrical systems, a lot of these control systems to feed in to keep it in that safe operating range. This new class, they just can't hit it. And the US government has been spearheading a lot of these for the last 20, 30 years. And so what we're seeing is a lot of that data is now going to be used and is influencing this current generation of designs. So now that we have the cost in place and we have a very safe risk profile, Then it becomes, how do we scale this? How do we get in the right place? And how do we couple it with all the battery systems, solar and wind, to have a comprehensive energy solution?
And we've seen, billions of dollars of venture capital go into these small modular reactor companies, Valor, Oklo, Janta Power. There's quite a few now. Many of them are going critical, ahead of our 250th birthday of the United States. But it's great that they're all getting funded and making progress, yet, there is critical bottlenecks in the nuclear fuel supply chain. If you can't get the fuel that these reactors rely upon to actually operate, then these are just kind of hunks of concrete that can't do anything. I imagine that you guys saw a critical bottleneck in the enrichment side of the fuel supply chain, decided to start this company. Can you maybe talk a bit about that?
Well, we did. So my partner and I, we met at a fusion company, and I will not convince anybody here to invest in fusion if you're looking at a short-term return. But what we were able to see was this need for large amounts of lithium-6. So lithium-6, for one of these test reactors, it's going to need swimming pools of enriched material. And the entire US capacity is that of a shot glass per year. So what we saw was this very big need, and this is something that's critical for them to produce tritium, and tritium is $30 million a kilogram. So any reactor that's putting together a business plan that relies on $900 million in feedstock to produce $400 million in electricity, that's not going to get them over the finish line. But we actually have had to convince a lot of fusion companies that they need the very fuel which is going to allow them to succeed. And this is something where there's just a lot of people that misunderstand enrichment in general, or our method, atomic vapor laser isotope separation. There are people on our cap table that don't know what we do. Mike wrote a 27-page executive summary about what we do. So he has got
it. Was 40.
Oh. But that kind of learning and passion and understanding of what's required to bring these across the finish line is something that I think we're now building a lot of that momentum. We've got this little MaC venture company that brokered a deal with, at the time, Sam Altman's Oklo and Bill Gates' Janta Power and Lawrence Livermore National Lab. And everybody's like, this is amazing. These are two enemies. And who's that in the middle? That was us. And it's because we have the tech that has been proven at metric ton scale in the past, and we're bringing that back, and we're at least removing one more piece of something that could prevent wide-scale adoption.
That's great. Matt, I'm going to go a bit off script here, so apologies, but I'm sure we'll be able to answer. But Janta and Hexium are building hardware. They're building, things, atoms in the real world. You have chosen to build software. You guys are not building batteries. I'm just curious, when you thought about the battery landscape and looked at all the players, was it a purposeful decision to focus on sort of optimization software? Can you kind of talk about that and maybe go a little bit deeper into the software that you're doing and what it can enable?
Yeah, absolutely. So both my co-founder Julian and I, we have been on the other side of the table as well. We have built these large-scale projects. We have operated them. We have seen the challenges that they started to face from very early on. Our first company was in a battery optimization in around 2016 when Tesla came up with these mega packs and everybody was rushing towards batteries. But the market was not ready. Nobody knew what to do with them, but they knew something is there. Right around then, it was very obvious as we started working on the other side after the acquisition and everything with the developer, realizing how the landscape rapidly is changing. So what has been going very well in the battery space is a lot of very rapid wins very early on. So all you needed for a battery project to be profitable was to have a good foresight of where the market prices are going to change, and just position yourself in the right side of it, like basically buy low, sell high, and boom, you have a profitable battery for yourself. Things have changed so quickly in that space. The markets have become more saturated, a lot of deployment. It has become more difficult to make basically those bets. But also, as the markets become shallower, you start having an impact in what you do in the market prices. And now if you see a price is going a certain way and you're like, okay, it's a good time to actually reflect and act accordingly, your response to that price is going to change the price. So a lot of that is just like a few examples of the challenges that today's portfolios are facing. Oh, I said portfolios. Another problem is these batteries are not anymore just one battery that I built and I hope it performs well. It's about this battery and another battery. I have another one and a wind farm that I have there and a coal plant that I have there. And I want the entire portfolio to cooperate in a way that it ends up being a profitable, well-performing portfolio. These are very difficult technical challenges. One thing we realized when we were on the operational side of things is that it's not necessarily the software to optimize. Basically, by optimize, I mean like charge and discharge. That is not lacking. There are plenty of those options, good options out there in the market. It's about, if you're owning that portfolio, understanding how your portfolio performs is the first thing that we realize our customers cannot answer. It sounds simple. They know how much revenue their assets are making, but they don't know if that is enough. They don't know how much they could have made. They don't know, and even if they know that, they don't know why they are making this much and not that much. What part of this like massive pool of possibilities they are doing, they can optimize to improve their performance from here to here. So all of those answers and questions unanswered in a multi-stack projects, multi-million-dollar, hundreds of millions of dollars investment. Everybody's asking the question, how is this portfolio and why you're not making return on investment? Or if you are, can you make more? All of those turns into intelligence and understanding. And that intelligence becomes more and more not only important, but also complex. And that's where Powerline came in. From the background, we are in a good position. Julian and I, I'm a co-founder. We have built projects. We have built software that optimizes these portfolios. We understand that operation. So now that the complexity is massive, we were like, okay, let's put an AI on top of all of this and go deep into operation in a vertical that we bring in those expertise, and we basically leverage the token capital to improve the human expertise capital that these companies have to make them to be able to achieve massive amount of basically efficiency with a fraction of resources.
That's great. Mohammed, I'm going to go off script again, but when we met you and Janta, I almost couldn't believe that someone else hadn't come up with this idea of vertical solar arrays where you can sort of, collect as much power in a much smaller footprint that unlocks, customers and use cases like putting this outside of an airport or a hospital or, sports facility. It's like, when you thought about starting this company and looked at the competitive landscape, did you also have that question of wait, how has this not been done before? Can you walk us through that, and why are you one of the first, if not the first, to do this?
Yeah, when the idea came into my head, I had to downplay it. You can't get excited yet. Yeah. It exists. And so, but at the same time, I was still doing my tests and designing and all of that, and then got a patent attorney, go do your search. I know you're going to come back and tell me that it exists. Came back, nothing close to what you're doing, so keep on going. So it was interesting, and yeah, I had that thought, and a lot of people that I talked to were like, how come this didn't exist yet? I think a big part of it is just being able to connect dots in a specific way that's very unique to kind of the problem that we're trying to solve, and the combination of the different things that we put together, right? So there's just going vertical, but in addition to that, we also have the most unique way of tracking in the solar industry right now, which is azimuthal, right? So there are fixed tilt systems. There's single axis northwest or northeast trackers that dominate the market. And then there's the azimuthal tracker, which is what we have, where the tower spins on its own azimuth or its own pivot, basically. So there's a lot of different things that came together to make the technology actually work. Because I think just the power density would have been awesome, but you have power density plus increased energy production as well, and I think it makes a really big difference.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think I'll ask maybe a closing question, maybe one more if we have time, but I want to give you each the chance to sort of answer this. But, looking forward through the next year or two, what technical milestones in your industry or in your particular companies would prove that this is working, that the thesis is right, that the market is ready for what we're doing, that we need to keep going, and that importantly, investors should be getting very, very excited about what you're doing. Maybe Jake, I'll just start with you.
Yeah, I think we're probably a little spoiled in that we haven't had to convince our customers that they need the product, not since the early days of kicking this off. We now have a multi-billion-dollar backlog for a company that is yet to produce material, and we are standing up our machines right now to do so.
And to be clear, your customers are both on the government side as well as the commercial side, correct?
They are.
Yep.
Yeah, and our tech, a lot of it came out of the government, came out of Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory through a historic program that was just mistimed with both the market and the current state of technology, and we've been able to bring that up and guide it forward to this production scenario. So late last year, we achieved, enrichment is measured by separation factor. A good separation factor is 1.2, and that just means you're increasing the amount in certain atoms, a very small amount. Late last year, we achieved a separation factor of 122,000. And when you do that, the NNSA gets very interested, and you learn how quickly you can buy a ticket and get there and defend it, because what we're doing is very sensitive, and it's also very valuable to the government as well as our customers. So that moment for us definitely validated the team we had, these brilliant laser scientists and plasma physicists, and the work they had done. And so we have a lot of upcoming milestones as well that I'm sure you'll hear more about. But the lithium one was especially exciting for me because that unlocks fusion energy and also molten salt fission reactors.
That's great. Matinee?
So AI has already gotten in every company out there, like increasing productivity more than 50%. But I think on the energy side, on the battery portfolio side, there are two pieces, investment and development piece and operation piece. On the investment side, I think we already are seeing signals of it, but the moment the investors and developers start evaluating projects, intelligence and software piece separately than the asset itself, that is going to be that moment that you are talking about. And we are seeing signals of that today. Up to 10% of the revenue of these projects are spent on software and intelligence. So it's already showing you that people started to realize two identical projects are not necessarily the same just because they exist. It's like if one has a superior intelligence as software, it's more valuable because it's about these batteries are like decision-making operational machines, financial machines, basically. So if one has superior intelligence and know how to extract more value out of it, it's a more valuable project, even everything else is the same. On the operational side, I think we gotta, and that's where we are really pushing and creating a category in the industry, moving traders and operators from staring at dashboards and collecting information and spending most of their expertise and time on gathering information and making sense of these dashboards to just actually getting all of that job to AI to evaluate recommendations and risks and actions that are produced by those expert AI agents and spend their expert times on those instead of staring at the dashboard and collecting data. That is where I think the transformation is going to come in the industry. And that is basically like what our Powerline platforms are for operators. Hey, you are too expensive to worry about this stuff. Let the AI go ahead, work for you, make sense of all of this, run jobs, figure out exactly when you need to take an action and come to you when you need to pay attention to something or for you to evaluate the results of it. And I think those two.
That's great.
Yeah.
Mohammed, please close this out quickly. What are the milestones you are looking to hit over the next 12 months that will tell you we're on the right track?
Yeah, there's a really big one in our company currently. It's kilowatts per acre. It's that simple. How many kilowatts can we get into a single acre? Traditional solar, for context, is at about 200. Currently, with our technology, we're at 500 kilowatts per acre. And we thought that was probably the max. And then about 3 months ago, we figured out a different way of adding an additional layer of tracking. Traditional solar can track on its own pivot. It can balance like this. And then now we're coming up with an idea called transverse tracking, where our towers actually have the ability to transverse across as well, which means that you can get them closer together because then they can avoid each other's shadows. And the theoretical max is now 800 kilowatts per acre. Not proven yet, but if we actually achieve this, it would be crazy. So I'm super excited about that.
Hey man, I love it. Thank you guys. This is very inspirational. Appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
on.